Thank you for joining Gowling WLG for this Employment, Labour and Equalities podcast. We are an international law firm working in major sectors including energy, life sciences, infrastructure, financial services, real estate and technology. Our episodes cover the latest developments relevant to you across different sectors and services. Make sure you subscribe to receive the latest episodes of this podcast. Visit our website gowlingwlg.com for all of our latest insights.
Hello, I'm Anna Fletcher, a Legal Director in the Employment, Labour and Equalities team here at Gowling WLG. And today I'm delighted to introduce Felicity Lindsay, a partner in our real estate team. Felicity has a particular focus on commercial development and investment transactions in the real estate sector. And today's podcast is going to focus on the future of the office as a physical space and what that means for employers as well as landlords and investors. So Felicity, this is an area that you and others in the firm have focused on. Why is that?
Hi, Anna. I focus primarily on the office sector, actually, and I think that this really is potentially a watershed moment for offices. We at Gowling act for a number of landlord investor clients who have office portfolios, and I think that those investors who engage with their tenants and really listen to them and try to understand what they're looking for from their space. I think that they will be the winners in this situation. So we focused on this because change in the office sector has been coming for a long time, but obviously recent events have really accelerated that. So it's a really interesting time to be involved in the office sector.
And in terms of the sort of research you've done, what steps did you take to kind of make those investigations?
Yeah, so we earlier on in the year we partnered with the British Property Federation and surveyed almost, not quite, but almost 500 office occupiers, and they ranged in size, so the amount of space that they hold and the number of employees that they have. But we undertook that survey earlier in the year, and actually the results were really interesting. I think the one big point that came out of that research was that office occupiers are really looking for more flexibility. We all know it's difficult to make any decisions about anything. I'd quite like to go on holiday, but I can't make a decision in terms of where to go. So it's really hard for office occupiers at the moment to make those decisions, and so flexibility was the sort of key message that came from that survey that we did earlier on in the year.
That's really interesting. That really chimes with what we're hearing from our employer clients around the need for flexibility, both in terms of office space, but also about the management of their employees. So you think that people are looking at moving offices or changing their office space, changing location?
Yes. So then the survey results said that most occupiers, actually, of the almost 500 that we surveyed, most of them are thinking in one way or another, are thinking about moving. In the next 3 years, the majority of them have the opportunity to move. So whether that's because their lease comes to an end or because there's a break clause in their lease that means that they will be able to exit early. So yes, that there is a lot of potential movement in the market. 46%, so I'm looking at the report to make sure I give you the right number, 46% of occupiers said that they're actively looking at the moment. And then another 20% on top of that would like to move, but have commitments to their current space for a little bit longer. On the flip side, 31% said that they're perfectly happy where they are, and so they're going to stay put, but possibly look at reconfiguring the space that they've got, or looking for different amenities, just reusing that space in a different way.
Seems flexibility really is the buzzword here, isn't it, in relation to physical space and people looking for different ways of working following this really unparalleled time where we've all had to adapt. So what about home working? Did they have anything to say about home working in response to your survey?
Yes, undoubtedly there's been a permanent shift towards remote working. So just over a third. So again, let me check my stats. 38% said that they'll offer greater flexibility to their employees, but then 35% said that they had already been offering that pre-pandemic. So there is a massive, proportion of the office occupying population who are looking for more flexibility. Having said that there's always a but. So 1 in 5 said that they were expecting their staff to return to the office as usual when the work from home order is lifted. Now we did do the research earlier on in the year, and obviously as of very recently that work from home order has been lifted. So it would be interesting to see, I think, if we do the research again post change in the rules, whether those percentages will change. But yeah, definitely there seems to have been a permanent shift towards more flexible working, and employers offering that to their employees, and offices having to accommodate that.
It's interesting, isn't it, because I think know from all the research that we see being published that lots of employers are looking to adopt a much more flexible model, and I think the last piece of research I saw from the Institute of Directors, which is now quite a few months old, suggested that about 2/3 of employers were expecting people to be in the office between 1 and 4 days a week. And I think we see that reflected in lots of the commentaries at the moment, that the idea of people being back in the office 5 days a week may actually be unusual going forward.
Yeah, and I think our survey was inconclusive on this, because there wasn't the agreement. Flexibility came back sort of loud and clear as the answer, but there wasn't so much agreement on the proportion of time that people are expecting their employees to be in the office. So almost half said that they were expecting their staff to work from home more, but then 42% said that they were expecting their staff to spend more of their time in the office than at home. So the statistics are sort of slightly confusing, I think, but there does seem to have been a sort of general acceptance that more of a hybrid model is probably on the cards for most organisations.
The organisations that you surveyed, did they sort of express a view around the benefits of office working?
Yeah, and I think there's a range of benefits. So availability of just physical meeting space, both for clients of the organisation and for colleagues within. 40% had that availability of a physical meeting place as being a benefit of office working. Another 40% said that they thought that offices help with development and learning for staff, and that actually, in conversations that we've had after the report was published, that one seems to chime with everybody, that the learning that you get, the learning benefit that you get from just being physically close to each other in the office is something that people have been missing whilst we've all been working remotely. And 27% mentioned that they think offices help with productivity. Now you're probably thinking that the maths is all skewed, but people could answer with more than one benefit. So there certainly was a range of responses to that. But I think the physical proximity and the benefits that seems to have for people in their working lives, that came through loud and clear.
Yeah, I think it's to collaborate and to I suppose develop your culture as a team, for example, or as just a larger organisation working together is really, really key. I think the point in relation to productivity is quite interesting. So I could be quite cynical and think that, you know, there may still be some who think that people are not particularly productive when they're at home if they're not being managed, if you like, in the flesh. But I think it's interesting because certainly the Office for National Statistics produced some data saying that we've in fact seen an almost 10% increase in productivity. So actually I think it's quite interesting, and there's lots of research out there about employees saying actually when they're working from home, that lack of differentiation between, you know, going to the office to work and being at home to be at home has actually led to people working much longer hours, and in some cases people feeling quite stressed. So I think that there's a lot to be said for maybe a combination of both, that hybrid model that we've been talking about being really beneficial for both employers and employees.
Yeah, and I think certainly, you know, outside of the survey, just talking to, you know, people that I've worked with, or, you know, clients, the ability to sort of pick and choose and know that people are set up to work from home now, you know, and it is possible, it has worked, it has been working, and so, you know, allowing employees perhaps a little bit more flexibility to pick and choose whether today's a day in the office because there's something that means that being there and being close to people is a benefit, and perhaps tomorrow working from home because it's a heads down, you know, peace and quiet day. So I think that perhaps the pandemic has accelerated something that was beginning to happen anyway, but allowing people, you know, the flexibility to choose where best they might be productive on any particular day.
Absolutely. And we've heard a lot about well-being and mental health and the impact of the pandemic, and I just wondered whether those who've responded to your survey sort of picked up on that as well, because it does seem to be quite high on the agenda.
Yes, so it was one of the sort of larger proportion of the answers. 31% cited mental health and well-being as a positive attribute of office working.
That's definitely, I think, reflected in so much of the research that's been done at the moment around the impact. And I suspect, I mean, from a personal perspective, you know, one of the things that I'm most looking forward to is getting back to be with the people that I work with, rather than seeing them on sort of Zoom meetings. It'll be so nice to actually be back. So in terms of what you expect to see in the future, what do you think we might see, given the basis of the research results that you obtained in your survey?
So I think it's fair to say that the way people use offices and think about the benefits of offices is changing. It, as I say, it had started before the pandemic, but I think the pandemic has accelerated that change. I think one of the things that the pandemic highlighted was that inherent need that people have to just gather together in a communal space and sort of, you know, bounce off of each other, thrive by being in other people's presence. Our respondents indicated that they do see a need for the office environment. So the office is not dead. The office is just changing. The way the office is used is going to change, and I think there's going to be reconfiguration of space. So it's not necessarily less space; it's space used differently. And I think there's a surprising number of office occupiers who have that flexibility coming up in the short term. So I think this is not something that is going to, you know, stop start. I think now that the pandemic has been the catalyst, I think that people have the flexibility in their arrangements to follow through on that. And I think that we may see more serviced offices being used. We may see just a different use of the more traditional office, but I think we're going to see it in the next probably 2 to 3 years. I think we're really going to see the market change. And as I said at the beginning, I think landlords and investors who embrace that change are really actually going to win from this. I think if landlords talk to their tenants and understand what they need, then I think the landlords who do that and really work with occupiers and employers to give them what they need to deliver to their occupiers, I think they'll benefit from all of this.
Thanks. So it's quite clear, isn't it, that the office is alive and well, just different.
Yeah, I think that sums it up nicely. I think the office is not dead. It's just a slightly different place than it was 2 years ago.
Well, thanks, Felicity. That's been really insightful. If anybody has any questions for Felicity, please do raise those. I hope you found this podcast of interest, and it'll be an area that we'll continue to monitor. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Anna.
Thank you for listening to this Gowling WLG podcast. If you liked this episode, please be sure to check out our website, gowlingwlg.com, for more useful podcasts and articles, or please leave us a review on iTunes. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast to join us for our next episode.